because this may be arrested. Because this cat on legacy. Last word.
I like it when they say thank you.
Right.
They just stop and walk away.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome. And I want to welcome all of our distinguished visitors, guests. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very special day for our contestants. I want to welcome you to the 2022 and the 85th American Legion High School Rhetorical Scholarship Program, a constitutional speech contest. Sponsored today by the Department of Georgia, Commander Mark Shreve and Adjutant Steve Negro. My name is Stephen Burnett. I am the chair of the Department of Georgia Rhetorical Program Committee, and I will serve as your MC today. In order to be fair to all contestants, there are a few things we'd like to ask of you. At this time, we ask that you please check to silence your phones and turn off any electronic devices. If your phone has a flash that goes off when it gives you any kind of call, you'd also turn that off. And please make sure phones, pagers, etc., even tablets are muted. There is no pictures or recording during our contest allowed during this competition, except for those specifically authorized by the contest chair, myself, and the committee. It is, however, being live streamed, and it will be posted on the American Legion Department of Georgia Facebook page, and a link will be sent on our website. At this time, would you please rise and remain standing until completion of the Pledge of Allegiance. Legionnaires, uncover. SAL Commander Brandon Roberts, would you kindly lead us in prayer?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for allowing us this opportunity to come together today for the oratorical contest. I pray that you would be here in our presence today. I pray for all of the contestants that are participating in this contest. I'm thankful for their diligence and their willingness to participate in this contest today. We also want to take a moment to remember our servicemen and women, our POWs, MIAs, and their families. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name.
At this time, I will humbly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance of our United States. So we'll welcome you. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Legionnaires, please rise. You may be seated. It is with great pleasure and an honor, and I am quite personally happy to be invited today to MC for you. This afternoon, we have 4 contestants who will continue their quest to reach a $68,000 scholarship program, which will be awarded through the national contest that's going to be held for the finals in Indianapolis, Indiana, on April 22nd through 24th this year. In the 85-year history of this contest, the American Legion has awarded over $3.75 million in college scholarships to this program. As you may notice, and looking around the room, contestants are not in the auditorium with us. During the contest competition portion of this event, they will appear individually on the stage and deliver their respective orations. Again, I repeat, in fairness to all contestants, I would ask that you also not applaud until the contest is complete and we come to the awards portion of our program. And the contestants will be getting those awards and recognition one phase of the United States Constitution. The contestants are not allowed to use notes, a podium, or a sound system. The contestants will be shown a colored and numbered time card by our timekeepers here. 8, 9, and 10-minute mark. Notations are made. 8 is green, 9 is yellow, and 10 is red. If there is a violation in the time requirement, a time penalty point for each minute or a fraction thereof will be assessed against the contestant's total score, and I will announce it to you. There will be a short pause between contestants to allow the judges time to mark their cards and score on the ballots. Please be aware if you are near a judge in any way, try not to disturb them. Before introducing contestant number 4, I will be asking a member of the audience to draw the assigned topic from the ones I have provided here. All the contestants will then speak for 3 to 5 minutes on that same assigned topic subject. When the contestant number 4 has spoken for 7 minutes on their prepared oration, contestant number 1 will be taken into a holding room, a very private room, and given an envelope containing that particular assigned topic card. And be allowed 5 minutes only, to prepare for their assigned topic presentation. I will read the assigned topic to you before contestant number 1 is introduced. With that, again, thank you for being in attendance today, and thank you so much for helping us to provide the best environment for our contestants. Judges ready? Timekeepers ready? I will call for contestant number 1. Contestant number 1, the title of his oration is "The First Amendment, a Power to the Whole."
My name is Gary May. As a veteran of the Vietnam War, I understand the importance of sacrifice to protect freedom. I went overseas to uphold freedom because I believe it is crucial to American democracy. While I was fighting for freedom, I lost my legs to a landmine explosion. I returned home to face not only discrimination due to my disability, but scorn from those who believed I had been fighting the wrong fight. Despite this persecution, despite the loss of my legs, despite the horrors of battle, I do not regret my actions. Because I believe that freedom, be it the freedom to speak or the freedom to dissent, is critical to Americans as a nation and a people. In China, citizens are prevented from doing anything but obeying their government. Internet access, freedom of speech, and more are limited by governmental oversight. However, the United States of America has since the beginning been a nation where citizens can not only play an active role in their government, but are encouraged to do so. Most citizens consider their ability to impact the government to be found in their right to vote. While voting rights are a crucial part of the U.S. government, citizens overlook the significance of another set of rights listed in the First Amendment. The Constitution works to protect the freedom of its citizens, and its First Amendment especially strives to uphold freedom. Out of the 5 rights the First Amendment provides to citizens, 4 are fundamental freedoms necessary for a person to express themselves. Citizens ought to recognize what this amendment has to offer and how it can be used. The First Amendment allows citizens to express themselves through the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the right to peaceably assemble, and the freedom freedom to petition. Its power ought to be valued and appreciated by the Americans who have it. As I'll explain to you, the power of the First Amendment can be seen in its history, its contents, and its current usage. First, let's take a look at the history of the First Amendment. The First Amendment was a change made to the U.S. Constitution during the ratification process. It's a member of the Bill of Rights, a group of amendments that outline protections citizens have from government regulation. The Bill of Rights was created to ensure the ratification of the Constitution. Anti-Federalists refused to ratify the Constitution because it contained no Bill of Rights. They feared that without sections of the Constitution to outline which rights citizens retained under the new government, the government would make tyrannical laws regulating people's liberty. When it appeared Massachusetts wasn't going to ratify the Constitution, the Federalists, represented by James Madison, agreed to creating a Bill of Rights. Madison wrote 17 potential amendments to be passed through Congress. By the time these had passed through Congress and the state legislatures, only 10 amendments remained. The First Amendment and its fellow Bill of Rights members were ratified and remained a part of the Constitution on December 15, 1791. Ever since then, the First Amendment has served as a defender of America's freedom of expression. Second, let's examine the contents of the First Amendment. Freedom of speech is arguably the most valuable of the expression rights granted by the First Amendment. Freedom of speech allows citizens to voice their opinions and viewpoints even if they contradict the opinions of the government. Freedom of speech has been interpreted to apply to both spoken and written speech. Through spoken speech, people can express themselves and convey their ideas. Spoken speech is perhaps the greatest indicator of emotion. But when written down, speech takes on another persuasive dimension. People can forget something said minutes ago, but written speech is permanent. People still read the Federalist Papers the Founding Fathers published over 200 years ago and can understand their ideas. I have often enjoyed having discussions about political policy with my friends and family. These discussions allow me and my peers to better understand our ideas and how to be good citizens in the future. Without the freedom of speech, however, these discussions and the opportunities they present would never occur. Of course, the freedom of written speech is far less effective if that speech cannot spread to other citizens of the U.S. The press is the machine by which written speech reaches the people. But the press must be free to share controversial ideas and information if people are to learn of other viewpoints. Press coverage of police brutality in Birmingham, Alabama brought national attention to the plight of African Americans. The press also made the people aware of the details behind Richard Nixon's Watergate scandal. If the press only publishes what the government tells them to publish, then the press becomes a method of subjugation, tricking the people into thinking what their leaders want them to think. It is thanks to the freedom of the press that political parties can publicize their ideas when they do not hold office. Freedom of the press is necessary to give citizens a true choice in what viewpoint they adopt when voting. The right to peaceably assemble is perhaps the most underappreciated of the expression rights. Citizens figure that they already have the press to help them spread ideas, so they don't need to meet and discuss them. Therefore, they assume that the right to peaceably assemble cannot be beneficial to them. However, this right can be used to do far more than meet and discuss ideas. Every time citizens gather in a march or rally, they are exercising their right to peaceably assemble. This right allows citizens to show the government just how many people desire a change of policy. For petition is deceptively simple, yet exceptionally powerful. Freedom to petition is another way of citizens showing the government strength in numbers. A petition is a form on which people place their signatures to show their support of a certain idea. Petitions can be given to those in power without the hassle of organizing an entire assembly. By 1878, Congress had received thousands of petitions as part of the women's suffragist movement. And these petitions are credited with being partially responsible for the ratification of the 19th Amendment. With the increased usage of the internet, people from around the world can sign a petition with the click of a mouse. Petitions are easily accessible and transmitted to those in power, and therefore are a crucial tool for impacting the legislature. Finally, we can see how the First Amendment is used in modern times. Citizens use the First Amendment on a daily basis, whether they realize it or not. It is as important to America's freedom today as it was the day it was ratified. When George Floyd was unjustly killed by police in public, citizens witnessed the event using their right to peaceably assemble and spoke out about the atrocities they saw using their freedom of speech. It is thanks to the First Amendment that Mr. Floyd's family ultimately received justice. Citizens use the First Amendment not only to protect themselves, but to speak out for justice. The First Amendment is a crucial part of the U.S. Constitution. It allows citizens to express their opinions and gives them the tools to make them known. The First Amendment ensures that everyone, from wealthy businessmen to middle-class workers to students like me, have the ability to impact the government. In this speech, I have shown how the First Amendment is crucial to America's freedom. Citizens ought to recognize and better appreciate the First Amendment and its value. So the next time you're voicing your opinion, going to church, or simply commenting on the news, think of the First Amendment, a power to behold. Thank you.
Nine 32.
Contestant number one's time is 9 minutes and 32 seconds. There is no time penalty. Judges ready? Did you just sort of nod your head to me? Timekeeper ready? Contestant number two. Contestant number two. The title of the oration is Seeds of Liberty.
Sunday, April 14th, started as a clear day in Guymon, Oklahoma. The temperature was in the upper 80s, and citizens in their fourth year drought gathered in the Methodist Church for a rain service. The congregation packed the church, praying for rainfall, and in the late afternoon, the skies darkened. But instead of the life-giving rain so desperately asked for, the worst of the black blizzards hit Guymon, a dust storm of epic magnitude. Unfortunately, this dust storm was not an isolated occurrence, but one of dozens of horrific dust storms that ravaged the Great Plains in a period known as the Dust Bowl in the mid-30s. These ravaging storms were caused by severe drought and wind erosion that occurred because for the previous 10 years, the topsoil in the Great Plains had been plowed deep enough to destroy deep-rooted grasses that would have helped to trap moisture in the soil, even during a drought. Over the years, as the grasses were replaced by crops, the soil became more and more vulnerable to erosion, decreasing the level of moisture in the soil and creating a worsening cycle of dryness. The Dust Bowl destroyed millions of acres of land, tens of thousands of small farms tilled by American farmers, and countless families were forced to abandon their farms. However, not all storms that sweep across our land are dictated by the weather. are political and threaten our rights and freedoms, just as the Dust Bowl threatened the lives and livelihoods of American farmers. Just like the soil on our Great Plains, our society and government require care and nurturing to keep our rights safe from erosion. We must tend to the ideas planted by the founding fathers in the Constitution of our republic. The soil in which the seeds of freedom are sown is the hearts and minds of each American citizen. And much like any plant, if the soil is dry and unaccepting, a seed cannot grow. If the soil is full of weeds, a seed will be unable to find place to take root. And so too, if planted in good soil and nurture, this seed of freedom can grow into a beautiful plant of liberty. One great example of a seed of freedom being nurtured into a plant of liberty is the 1963 case Gideon Lee Wade, where a poor, uneducated drifter fought for his right to have free legal counsel. On January 8, 1962, the United States Postal Service delivered a letter, handwritten on yellow legal paper, to the United States Supreme Court. The letter was from Florida State Prisoner Clarence Earl Gideon, who had been arrested for breaking and entering with the intent to commit a misdemeanor at Bay Harbor School, Panama City, Florida. Before his trial, Gideon asked for, but was denied lawyers to represent him, and he was forced to represent himself. Gideon argued that this conviction violated his due process found in the 14th Amendment. In a similar case, Betsy Brady, the Supreme Court rejected the contention that due process clause of the 14th Amendment provided a guarantee of free legal counsel. In Betsy Brady, the Supreme Court stated that a defendant required special circumstances in order to qualify for free legal counsel provided by the state. Gideon could have claimed such special needs, such as being illiterate, mentally stunted, or any other instance where fair trial is clearly impossible. But he denied having such special needs because he didn't want to have to lie to a judge in order to obtain a lawyer. Gideon knew that he had a constitutional right to have a lawyer represent him. After his conviction, Gideon sent letter after letter to the Supreme Court until they finally accepted his case, which he won. He was retried for his trespassing charge, but this time with the assistance of an attorney, Mr. W. Fred Turner. At his second trial, Mr. Turner cross-examined the state's star witness, Henry Cook, and further called in witnesses who testified on Gideon's behalf, which wasn't done in his previous trial. In May of 1967, Gideon was acquitted of all charges. This Supreme Court case is an example of a seed of freedom being nurtured into a plant of liberty. Gideon could have easily been overwhelmed and intimidated by the weeds of legal obstacles, the harsh dirt that is the seeming indifference of the Supreme Court, or even his own lack of education and experience in legal proceedings. But Gideon did not let these things dissuade him from speaking out repeatedly until he was heard and vindicated, letting a flower of liberty blossom. The government is much like a garden. If left unattended, the weeds of tyranny grow. The soil becomes harsh and barren. The flowers planted by the founding fathers wither and die fruitless. There is no better example of this than the oppression of Black Americans in the late 19th century to mid-20th century by Supreme Court cases like Dred Scott v. Sanford in 1857, where the Supreme Court stated that people of African descent were not and were never intended to be included under the word citizen in the Constitution, and therefore claim none of the rights and privileges that the Constitution provides for and secures to citizens of the United States. Or Plessy v. Ferguson, which is regarded as the worst decision of the United States Supreme Court. The case began in 1892 when Plessy, a mixed-race resident of New Orleans, was charged with violating the Louisiana Separate Car Act of 1890, which forced the segregation of train cars for white and non-white passengers. Plessy was charged with boarding a whites-only car and argued that the segregation between blacks and whites was unconstitutional. He lost his initial trial, later appealing to the Supreme Court. However, they were not on Plessy's side, ruling a 7-1 decision against him, stating that although the 14th Amendment establishes a legal equality of blacks and whites, it did not and could not eliminate all distinctions based on color. Justice John Harvey was a lone dissenter of the almost unanimous saying that the Constitution is covered, and neither knows nor tolerates classes of citizens. Therefore, a law distinguishing passengers based upon the color of skin should have been deemed unconstitutional. These are the weeds of the government, the cracked, broken earth of America. However, hope wasn't lost, because the Supreme Court cases, like Brown v. the Board of Education in 1954, were a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court decision, stated that segregated educational facilities are inherently unequal, and therefore violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Brown v. the Board of Education not only struck down faulty Supreme Court cases, like Dred Scott or Plessy v. Ferguson, but further, it was the very foundation for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Liberty is easy to be taken away if uncared for. This has been shown throughout history by the Jim Crow laws, segregation, or the Japanese internment camp of World War II, for it is easy to destroy if left to the elements. However, if proper care and nurturing are provided, these seed of freedom can grow as strong and as massive as the tallest trees, or as boundless as a forest. The Constitution and its amendments are these seeds of freedom, planted by the founding fathers and entrusted to the American people to protect. We must never stop taking care of it, because trees can be cut down, forests can be burned. The soil in which the seeds of freedom are sown needs to be enriched by true civics education. For example, we are blessed by our First Amendment, which secures our rights of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and freedom of redress against the government. It's not just enough to know this, however. We must exercise our rights by speaking up whenever and wherever we see injustices our Constitution protects us from. We honor the 15th, the 19th, and the 26th Amendments whenever we put our words into action by voting on all levels of the government. We uphold the 6th Amendment whenever we serve on juries, ensuring that all elements of due process are upheld. Even participation in speaking programs like this one help us understand the power and strength of our Constitution, but help us pluck the weeds from our government that might threaten our freedoms. The Constitution needs to be protected so that our future generations can enjoy the same liberties we have the privilege of experiencing. That's why it's up to us, in our words and in our deeds, to tend to the seeds of freedom so that they can continue to flower and blossom into a beautiful plant of liberty.
$9:33.
Contestant number 2, time was 9 minutes and 33 seconds. There is no time penalty. Judges ready? Timers are ready. Contestant number 3. The title of her oration is We the People.
We, the people, are the guardians of the Constitution. As United States citizens, it alone is our responsibility to understand the fundamental principles provided by our document. The time has come to resurrect these principles. And in the midst of this desperate time, only a full comprehension of what the Constitution means to us will remedy the divide plaguing our country. But what is the Constitution? And how can one fully understand it? Well, it begins with understanding our founders, who were so incredibly terrified of the existence of tyranny that they were hesitant to even allot power to a create a perfect, balanced union, and to protect the citizens that reside under that union. The Constitution creates tension that can be seen in clauses such as the necessary and proper, which gives the central government the ability to utilize powers not directly referenced in the Constitution. This clause was utilized to expand our great country, yet early on in our history, it was despised by many of our citizens. The tension between the rules of the Constitution and the different interpretations of those rules is what creates this delicate balance between our central government and our state governments. This tension upholds our unity and protects our union. We, the people, must educate ourselves on our own history, the history that has paved the way for our lives today and that has gifted us with the Constitution. Now, I refuse to watch the news, and I know that sounds bad, but every time I watch, I feel badgered and disheartened with the slander and scandals of both sides. One may tune into a specific news network to hear with what aligns with their own political beliefs, and then change another news network to hear with what makes them angry. It seems as though the parties have become more than just separate sets of beliefs and positions, but rather bitter enemies intent on destroying one another. The traditional loyal opposition has virtually disappeared, and more often than not, our own citizens utilize confirmation bias to validate their pre-existing beliefs. The political discourse seems to have made most Americans view themselves as part of separate, smaller classes, rather than simply identifying underneath that term, America. As Senator Lindsey Graham said, quote, "America is an idea, not a race," end quote. Senator Graham touched on a very prevalent subject, what it means to be American. Well, I cannot tell you what it means to be American, because to be American is to be everything. We all share different sets of opinions and beliefs and backgrounds while still identifying underneath that term, American. The conflict begins when we as Americans are too willing to argue and too unwilling to compromise. In his presidential address, our first president, George Washington, said that, quote, "Your union ought to be the main prop of your liberty, and the love of one ought to endear you to the preservation of the other," end quote. Remember our own war between the states, a devastating time in American history, and a time, unfortunately, our Constitution failed. Southerners argued it was their right to secede from a government that had been treating them unfairly, a philosophy preached by our second president, Thomas Jefferson, even included in our own Declaration of Independence. During these 4 years, the North and the South fought, and we lost over $1.5 billion in property damage and over 618,000 American dead. The Constitution loomed over a broken country desperately trying to tiptoe around issues such as slavery. After these 4 years ended, a healing process began, starting with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th dealt with citizenship, and the 15th gave all men the right to vote regardless of race. These amendments to our Constitution allow it to remain flexible many of us would be willing to fight another civil war? I have yet to meet a person whose answer is yes. These amendments to our Constitution allows it to remain flexible with the times and to bend, but never to break. I stand before you today, fearful of our future generations and their negligence in comprehending the importance of the Constitution. The freedoms it ensures is essential, and we have fought for these freedoms in other countries as well. We have fought for First Amendment rights of speech and assembly, and we have sent our own troops overseas to fight for their people's rights as well. But the question still stands. What makes America so special? And why do we feel the need to send our own troops overseas and to ensure other countries with their own constitution? Well, the reason is because it works. This country was born on the basis of men who were tired of being mistreated. And of course, it took multiple attempts to construct a document fit to guide our country, but we did it nonetheless. As American citizens, wouldn't it be essential to understand every aspect of this document so fundamental in our lives? Because the Constitution does not just represent our governing body, it represents the American ability of overcoming odds. As Benjamin Franklin once said, quote, "The Constitution only gives the right to pursue happiness. You must catch it yourself." End quote. We, the people, must derive happiness from the unity that the Constitution brings. And we may argue and we may oppose for the sake of non-tyranny, but ultimately, unless we, the people, educate ourselves on our own history, we have lost. Out of many, one. Our national motto that is backed by the first three words of the Constitution. We, the people. We, the people, must bridge the divides we have created. We must study our Constitution, and only after that will our great union reign free. Thank you.
Contestant number three's time was 9:01. Is no time penalty. At this time, before I introduce contestant number four, it's time for us to draw the assigned topic. I'd like to call upon the auxiliary president, Ms. Hall. Contestant number four. The title of her oration is "The Paradox of the Constitution."
The Constitution of the United States of America, the foundation of our nation, Before the importance of this document can be fully realized, we must understand why it was created. By 1787, the scrappy colonies of the United States had been founded and forged under white rule. Things that we know. Possibility and opportunity hung in the air, unexpectedly grabbing some and throwing them in the trap of fortune. There was just one problem: the Articles of Confederation. The Articles were drafted as the first civil government in America back in 1777. They brought the states together to support each other, but this relationship was more of a mutual friendship than any true sense of unity. Over time, that friendship would start to waver as states had grudges and hosted tariff wars against those who were supposed to be their friends and allies. It looks like the Confederation would last for only so long. The failure of the Articles of Confederation to keep the country united led a group of Federalists, including Benjamin Franklin, Washington, Madison, and others, to come to a meeting in Pennsylvania. The natty, sweltering heat in Philadelphia added an entirely different meaning to the term heated debate. Governor Pierce Butler saw his wife leave town, claiming she had to get out of Philadelphia due to the sheer heat. Physical aspects of the convention aside, each person present had to decide how much government was needed to connect the fledgling colonies together. Alexander Hamilton was a strong supporter of a powerful central government similar to England, but so many others were afraid of a large government, and we had a reason to be afraid. We had just escaped a war started by an oppressive government not granting a voice to those asked. I would be skeptical. They argued, countered, and debated for 4 months until finally they finalized a document that would centralize and reform the nation. Keep in mind that members and signers all came from different states with goals and desires suited to each. The crafting of the Constitution had to be based on compromise. The idea of compromise is a definitively American problem and solution. With it, there is never any true personal or regional satisfaction, but without it, there is no unity. This compromise in the document's creation provided for certain leniencies, and with these leniencies came contradictions. These contradictions can best be seen in deciding who and what the Constitution stands for. The Constitution supports the wealthy, aristocratic Federalist that was created by, but it also equally stands for the common white man of the 1820s, the suffragettes of Seneca Falls, and the yearning, tempest-tossed immigrant masses of Lady Liberty Shores. It also stood for slave owners in the decades leading up to the Civil War. The spring of 1857, the Supreme Court determined that slaves can be viewed as property and can be transported wherever their masters please. May 1889, the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed, though Congress has no real power to enforce it. December 1944, the Supreme Court allows hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans across the country to be sent to internment camps. September 1787, the United States Constitution inserts a clause counting slaves as 3/5 of a person in the 3/5 compromise. We can't always take the Constitution at face value because face value is different for each person. The Constitution reflects each of us. We see old, young, every class, every race, every gender reflected in its wide lens. We can read that foundation of American literature and find a little bit of ourselves and our own self-importance and personal rights reflected there. Still, there is an expectation and a responsibility to live up to this wide lens. When deciding on issues afflicting our nation, courts cannot use the document to serve one. They must serve all, as is their American duty. We as citizens hold a responsibility too. When voting, we cannot think the one way we were raised, trained, or told to think. We should be flexible in our hearts and in our minds, and we should follow the precedent the Constitution sets for us. George Washington was a famous independent. In his resignation speech, he warned Americans against the dangers of party politics. proved to be the blueprint for court cases determining the large morality questions of ours and future times, even serving as a model for nations to follow. Maybe it is because our Constitution has that perfect mix of legality and room for interpretation. While researching for this speech, I came across a wonderful quote by Franklin Delano Roosevelt that perfectly sums up this argument. Quote, "The United States Constitution has proven itself the most marvelously elastic compilation of rules of government ever known." And it's true. Regardless of whether the document was made to conserve American society or completely transform it, it's got lots of missing links. From what our nation's history has shown me, these links are not a fault, but a strength. They provide a timelessness that keeps the Constitution relevant even today. The Constitution's contradictions are not a trait, but an effect of its nature. The Constitution, when held in your hands, will make the case for you. When held in my hands, it fights for me. When the document has to be interpreted for every American citizen's benefit, it's hard to find one solely correct judgment to follow. This little document, penned over 250 years ago, seems to have grown with our collective psyche. I find that too many people are too quick to judge, categorize, and label it. Some vault it away in faith and sacred gowns, claiming it infallible, while others verbally trash it, and with it, trash our history. We the people decide, but we, the people of America, are a complex, evolving, diverse people. We in ourselves are our paradox. How can we expect our governmental basis to be built on anything else?
Nine oh two.
Contestant number four's time was 9:02. There is no time penalty. For the past 5 minutes, contestant number one has been in a private room preparing for the assigned topic presentation. The contestants will be shown a number time clock from 3, 4, and 5 minute marks of their assigned topic discourse period. 3 is green, 4 is yellow, and 5 is red. Again, if there is a violation of the time requirement, a penalty, time penalty, of 1 point for each minute or a fraction thereof shall be assessed against the contestant's total score. The topic the contestants will address during this portion of the contest is as follows. Article 14, Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, and shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. The Congress may be, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Pardon my voice. I'm English.
imagine you're living in colonial times. America is hot off the heels of the Revolutionary War, and you and your family are going to witness an exciting new event, the swearing in of the first president of the United States. You and your family get in your carriage and ride off. You arrive, get into position, and watch as Benedict Arnold takes the oath to become your first president. Now, this is a frightening situation. We all know Benedict Arnold wasn't really our first president. In fact, he was a traitor who turned on the American army during the Revolutionary War to help the British. He was a man so despicable that yet, hundreds of years later, his very name is used as an insult. And we all know we wouldn't want Benedict Arnold as our president. Fortunately, this frightening situation should never come to pass in the United States. And it's thanks to the third section of the 14th Amendment. This section is a crucial part of the U.S. Constitution, and citizens should make a conscious effort to be aware of what it says and how it protects them. We can see exactly what this section of the Constitution does for us in three main points. Looking at what this section says, why it was written into the Constitution, and how it applies to us today. First, what does the third section of the 14th Amendment say? Essentially, it says that nobody who has betrayed or committed treasonous acts against the United States can hold any elected office in the U.S., ranging from the President of the United States to the Commissioner of your local school board. Second, why was this written into the Constitution in the first place? We all know we wouldn't want Benedict Arnold as our president. But why not? If he was capable of making tough decisions and could handle the stress of the office, why wouldn't we want him as our leader? The simple answer is trust. After he had betrayed the American people, we could not trust that Benedict Arnold would truly have the greatest interests of the citizens of the United States at heart, instead of working for his own benefit. Similarly, we can't trust that anybody who has betrayed the United States would have the American people's best interests at heart when it came down to it. So we can't have traitors in office because the American people need leaders they can trust. Finally, how does this section of the Constitution apply to us today? You may think that treason is not a real issue in modern times. It's just one of those charges that is there to scare people into obeying the law. However, in the 20th century, the U.S. government had to prevent the seating of a senator who was accused of aiding and abetting the Germans during World War II. Even today, it's possible for people to betray the United States. And it's easy for those same people to turn around and try to get an elected office in the U.S. That's why it's so important for citizens to be aware of what the third section of the 14th Amendment says and how it protects them, so that the American people can be sure they have leaders they trust and know in office, who are going to put their best interests at heart instead of working for their own benefit. Because nobody wants a Benedict Arnold sitting in the Oval Office. Thank you.
Three minutes, 55 seconds.
The contestant's time was 3 minutes and 55 seconds. There is no time limit.
When you hear the 14th Amendment, you probably think of citizenship being granted to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and guaranteeing all citizens equal protection under the law. However, that's really scratching the surface of this amendment. Many people don't know that there are several sections of the 13th Amendment, one of which being Section 3. Are public officials who took an oath of allegiance against the Constitution from serving again in public office if they engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution, standing as a barrier against tyranny. Section 3 was designed so that former or current federal officials who served the Confederacy could not serve in office again. A disqualification sentence from Senate is final and is not subject to review. However, Congress cannot simply declare someone outside the body of Congress ineligible without concurrence of the courts. To hold otherwise would allow simple majorities in Congress to oust federal officials without judicial scrutiny and would subvert long-established constitutional principles, such as life tenancy for federal judges and the limitations of an impeachment conviction. The rule that a court must determine if someone outside the body of Congress is ineligible was established in cases between 1868 and 1872, in which men who were accused of being ineligible contested that claim in court with full due process of the law. Although mostly unused in litigation, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment remains important because the Constitution contemplates no other disciplinary process. The most notable disciplinary process is expulsion, which can be done for virtually any reason with just a 2/3 vote. The only time Section 3 has been enforced, barring members-elect, was mainly during the Reconstruction era following the Civil War, barring the members-elect who served the Confederacy, and just a single time in World War I, in which the member-elect was convicted of the Espionage Act, a conviction that was later reversed on appeal. The Supreme Court, in Powell v. McCormick, states that eligibility requirements may be subject to exclusion through a majority vote. However, all other grounds must be addressed through expulsion and a 2/3 vote. The Supreme Court expressly declined in Powell to decide which of these categories addresses Section 3. I believe that Section 3 may be enforced against a sitting member of Congress through expulsion only, largely because the 2/3 requirement for expulsion is an important safeguard against partisan abuses. There are also questions on the verbiage of engaged in insurrection or rebellion. There are a few hints on what engaged may mean. When Congress addresses claims that a member-elect is ineligible under Section 3, they go through the cases carefully. In some instances, the member-elect is excluded. In others, he is not. However, gathering clues from this is difficult. Another point of insight is the only criminal case on Section 3, in which a jury was informed that a voluntary act was required to engage in an insurrection. There are also questions on what constitutes as an insurrection. Some may point to the January 6, 2021 event, in which a crowd of people stormed the Capitol building. There was intense debate on whether former President Donald Trump should be held accountable for this event and barred from office under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. However, these claims never came to fruition. Although mostly unused, I believe the use and importance of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment speaks for itself, and it stands as a shield against tyranny.
Four minutes, 1 second.
The contestant's time is 4 minutes and 1 second. There is no time penalty. Go ahead, ready? Time, I'll call.
would be disqualified from ever holding office, whether it be civil or military, unless Congress overrode this with a two-thirds vote. This disqualification clause was initially created to punish Confederate soldiers, but it was not specific just to Confederates. In fact, the last time this disqualification clause was used was 1919, in regards to a congressman accused of sending aid to Germany during the First World War. To combat this disqualification clause, the 1872 Amnesty Act was passed, which gave Confederates their voting rights back, as well as their political rights. Although the last time this disqualification clause was used was 1919, it is being called into question now over a very recent event that happened in our history. On January 6, 2021, citizens stormed the Capitol in protest of an election they believed to be fraudulent. Many are now calling into question this disqualification clause. Should those citizens be allowed to hold office after they stormed our Capitol? Well, it is up to you and your opinion to believe that, but this disqualification clause, or the third section of the 14th Amendment, is a great example of the people's check on making sure they are equally represented in office. Thank you.
3 minutes, 12 seconds.
I will call for the next contestant.
ensure the integrity of members of Congress. It calls for any member of the American government that is sworn to uphold and protect the Constitution to be barred from American politics after engaging in open rebellion against that same government. In other words, no one that is sworn they will uphold the values of the Constitution, those values being equality, democracy, and self-empowerment, may violate those values by violently overthrowing their own government. When ratified in 1868, the amendment was looking to solve the issues plaguing America post-Civil War. Former President Lincoln advised Congress to pardon ex-Confederates and make amends with them, but many felt it nonsensical to so quickly forgive the war that had cost 750,000 American lives. So, as a compromise, the South was slowly allowed back into participating in Congress. But the third section of the 14th Amendment made sure that all former government officials that had actually fought for the Confederacy would receive consequences. After the Civil War, all ex-Confederates who had previously been in office were barred from serving in federal offices because they were seen as those who had led an open rebellion against the Constitution of the United States, the document that they had sworn under oath to uphold and protect. Which makes sense, as who would want to allow those that had been fighting against those very offices to be so quickly defeated. Even Confederate supporters who did not fight, but rather fund the effort, were identified in the section, calling them those who, quote, given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, unquote. They were still published for their support of a movement looking to disband and divide the United States by not allowing them in Congress in the future to further influence the country. There has been much debate over the idea of what it takes to constitute an insurrection or rebellion in our country today, and how much is enough to remove someone based off of it. Regardless of current political arguments and controversy, this section was designed to protect Americans from anti-American representatives in Congress. The writers felt that, in order to represent the United States, you must at the very least support the United States. You must support it over any other party and over any other political ideology if you wish to keep it. Democracy is, after all, built on a foundation of compromise. The writers of the 14th Amendment also had to ensure that the idea of an anti-American representative didn't become entangled in political ideas alone. If we had a political motives rule who was kicked out of Congress, the American experiment could soon fall into chaos. The writers ensured that Congress must have a 2/3 majority vote in each house in order to remove any unfit officers, something that